Hello and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Enchkin, coming to you on this Monday, August 4th. RIFC continues their free fall, losing to the Pittsburgh Riverhounds 2-0. Can this team turn things around with a tough August schedule ahead? And will we see the start of that this week in a midweek matchup against Detroit City FC? Joining to go over all of that and everything in between, the one and only Jason Carey. Jason, how is it going, my friend?
Not too bad. Wish I could be having as much fun as like our friends up to the north in Vermont, but we still got some time to figure it out, right?
I mean, you think about it, right? First off, you want to give credit to Vermont Green becoming the USL2 champions. I believe now that's the second team in back-to-back seasons now where a New England team has won it, last year being the Seacoast United. I know the Vermont Green fans wouldn't want to be reminded of that, but champions can be made in New England. It just doesn't look like it's something that can be done in the states of Massachusetts, Rhode Island, or Connecticut. Maybe Maine we'll see what's going on with them a little bit closer to the end of USL1, but certainly right now, Rhode Island FC kind of in a tailspin here. Kind of things are, we tweeted it last week, things are starting to get bad. I can see the pitchforks coming out, and I can see the swords getting sharpened, and I'm hearing some noise. I'm hearing some noise from the community. Maybe it's rightfully placed, maybe it's a little bit misguided, but nevertheless, here we are now in this spiral of what could be a very difficult August ahead. We're going to talk about that a little later. But yeah, I wish I was a Vermont. I mean, I am a Vermont Green fan, but I wish I could call Vermont Green my one true and only right now. We're going to do things a little different because this is a midweek matchup. We're doing the earlier show. We couldn't do an interview or, a Monday mailbag in its exclusivity, but we are going to get a few of the heavy hitter questions out there. And so let's just jump straight into it with this first question.
Yeah, so Alan V here wants to know, how much patience does Kano have left to work with at this point?
I appreciate the way this was carefully constructed. This wasn't, is Kano out? When does Kano get sacked? It's more, how much, time does he have left? Is the seat getting warm, so to speak? Listen, the reality is this, is Coach Kano Smith is not going anywhere in this season. It does not matter how bad this team can go, and we're getting close to the basement. The reality is this, he signed a multi-year contract after having the second best team in all of USL Championship last season. The ownership, whether you like to hear this or not, is fully behind him. And unfortunately, this is just a circumstance where the results are not going the way they want. And I know people are frustrated. I know that the front office is frustrated. The players are frustrated. No one is happy about this situation. But the reality is that Kano's job is very much secure, at least through the end of the 2025 season, because of two things. One, even if you wanted to replace him, what coach could come in now at this point and do any kind of damage control that Kano himself can't? But Kano, and that's the second part, Kano still has a path to the playoffs, albeit the window is shrinking, it's getting smaller, but there's no reason to believe that he can't produce something when it comes to a playoff earned berth. The chances are of it being a kind of reemergence of what we saw last year, a renaissance of the season that we had in our first year, that's probably gone. We need to all face that hard truth. But I just don't see Kano Smith. I know everyone's frustrated. I know we all want to see this team get better. Unless Kano has done something at the complete rejection of what ownership has asked of him, this is very much Kano's team, and it will remain Kano's team at least through the end of the season.
Yeah, I think that at this point, like you said, we're not too far off the basement, so it really can't get too much worse. And it's likely that based upon how the off season goes too, they'll probably sit down, they'll have a conversation, they'll sit and say like, hey, that didn't go at all how we had planned, probably not how you planned either. Like, pitch us how are you going to fix that for this next year? We'll go into this next year. We'll kind of give you some time, reassess. Like, I'm thinking even like a year at earliest. If we're abysmal a year from now, maybe next summer they might start to think about it. But at this point, like, I think he'll be given another shot to figure it out.
I don't know right now if he gets that much grace, because there's two things that go through this at the end of the season. One is, if you're going to hit the reset button, doing it in the off season is always better than doing it in the middle of the season, trying to adjust things. But again, I don't necessarily believe it's much as table performance and all of that, as much as have the players remained bought in. And what we can see, just like how the fan base is shifting into a negative gear, the players, they're all human beings themselves. They start to see those results kind of get away from them. Players don't get their contracts renewed at the end of the season. Suddenly, as you're getting into those final 4 to 6 games, the players who know they're on a 1 year, maybe a 1+ club option, they suddenly know, I don't have a home and my entire resume this year is just not good. Like, that's where the locker room can start to turn. I'm not saying it has, but we could see in this final stretch of games, if winning does not start to occur, which is what solves all of our problems, you could start to see some disgruntled players, even starters who go, hey, I don't have a future with this squad, because next year they're going to either say I was one of the problems, or they're going to have to reinvent themselves, or 2, I'm not getting the looks that I want, so what do I do now? So like, that's when locker rooms start to turn. It's not because they can't handle losing matches. It's when they've tried everything to win, they've thrown everything at the wall, nothing's sticking, and now there's a sense of what's going on. So if Kano loses the locker room, if he goes against the front office's wishes or the ownership's wishes, those are the things that could make your lifespan shorten. I'm not saying any of that has happened, but I would also say, like, if we don't fix this, right, if we don't show signs of improvement, right, maybe the wins don't come. But I would argue that the game we saw this last weekend that we got the pleasure of rewatching, knowing the result, that wasn't a performance that we enjoyed watching. There were moments that were like, okay, this team's not that bad, but they also weren't that great. They seemed anemic again in the attack, and combine that with the last few matches. And we've got some stats to share tonight. And it's like, fans have been getting subjected to some really wicked bad soccer lately. And it's tough. It's been tough to see. So let's get into this next question. I think this is a perfect transition. Leo asks, is there anything the club can do outside of moving Kano on to try and turn things around? I love this question, because this is now saying, hey, Kano firing, the Kano ejection seat isn't worth it. The hot seat isn't hot. How do we fix this team?
We at this point, we have probably too many players, right? We still have one who's not even officially been signed yet. We'll see what he can bring to the team. I think at this point, we've saw in the last 2 games somewhat of a resurgence of kind of a 3-back line again. And I know we've been kind of calling for that for a while. And I think that in terms of what can the club do, I think this is here on Kano in the sense to pick a style of consistency, whether that be his 4-2-3-1 that he wants to employ, or that some version of like a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3, and then just continue with that. And I think on top of that, like, we need to see some consistent lineups is the problem. There's too much movement in terms of the squad and the team, and I know there's been some injuries, but at this point, those injuries have kind of dwindled down to a point where you could choose a starting 11, even maybe expand that to a few additional players who you do rotate. But if you're chopping, changing, moving that around like week after week, there's no consistency in this team. And I think that's what we need, is some consistency.
See, I would agree with a lot of that. I do think we probably need to run the stat, and maybe we'll ask that question of him on the Wednesday matchup of, you've chop and changed this roster now X amount of times. I don't think there's maybe more than 2 games where we've seen a consistency greater than 70% of roster from game to game. And a midweek matchup is no easier to see that because of needing to rest players and whatnot. But in addition to the consistency, I think the other thing here is, you mentioned it on several episodes now about Kano trying to employ a level of tactic that maybe our players just aren't suited for. Maybe it's just not a level that is seen here in the championship. What I would argue further is we've seen Kano deploy so many of our players this season in roles that are not their historic playing patterns, right? We've seen them like Clay and now Amos Shapiro-Thompson out on the right wing back, whatever you want to call it, right midfielder. But we've also seen where they play their best. I think personally that what is now hindering this squad from being at their best is that Kano has so much talent in positions of specificity that players all want to compete for, that rather than finding that really great player and saying, this is my starting player in this particular position for this formation, he starts to go, okay, well, I need both Hugo and Mark on this squad at the same time. Where does Clay go? Right? Well, Clay goes out to the right wing back versus playing a right back or a right wing back. And I think that that's starting to hurt the players because they're playing out of position. And while Coach Kano will praise his guys for saying like they have this versatility, they have this ability to do so many different things, sometimes you have to admit, and especially at this level of performance, that when you're really good at that one thing, that's how you win a game. That's how you break down a defense. That's how you go and do the thing you need to do to get all 3 points on the night. And I'm starting to wonder. We saw this weekend, we saw Chico in the right winger experiment. You've said for months now that Chico sometimes oddly looks better as a right winger, but now he's being completely pulled out of that goal poacher opportunity. Maybe, we never knew if that was where he shined the most and he wasn't getting the service. I wonder if not only is it the inconsistency of the starting 11, it's the formation, tactical changes. We've seen a little bit too much of it in this last 30 to 45 days, but it's also playing all of these players out of position. So I would argue, despite the fact that you might have 6 players all playing in that one spot of need, like, let's see what Danny Rivera can do, right? He finally got some sizable minutes here this weekend against his former club in the Riverhounds. But besides his injury, he hasn't really been able to demonstrate that he's on there. And granted, we're not seeing the training. We're not understanding how these players are fighting for these positions. But I almost have to wonder, is coach's dependency on this versatility also hamstringing him at the same time?
It was funny that you say that too, because, we'll get into the match a bit later here, but when coach made a bunch of changes and we effectively put on 2 actual fullbacks and kind of played what looked like a 4-back line, the team looked improved.
The team looked incredibly better after we made the substitutions after Williams' red card. It wasn't enough time, and maybe there wasn't enough left in that match, especially considering how good Detroit is defensively. But the team looked considerably better. Like, they knew they had a game plan. They knew what they needed to do on the night. Let's get into this next question here from Matt J.
All right. And then Matt J says here, with an off week coming after the 2 games this coming week, do you think it is coming at a good time to try and get on the same page and figure out how to put the ball in the net, or do you think it's too late?
I mean, we just talked about the consistency. We just talked about kind of maybe playing players in their natural position. The reality here is what is holding this team back. We've talked at length about how good they are at getting into the final third. Their entries are their average across the championship. It's just the big chances created. It's the moments where they're able to look dangerous with a sight on goal. When we rewatched the match, we noticed that a majority of the passing into the box came from crosses, very much a hesitancy or a reluctance to play in that central channel, to play balls on the ground. A lot of our passes get into the air.
Where I forget exactly who someone was making a trailing run, and rather than crossing, if they would have just played the ball back towards like the center circle,
Jorgeya didn't hit Marky Barr at the top of the box. He just
Mark
sent it
could
into
have
the
had a shot on goal there.
So I think that there's some clinical discipline that either stems from coach's direction. Maybe it's because he's a former winger and that's what he loves to do. But there seems to be this attack, like steady-minded attack prowess of, we're going to go up the left flank a majority of the time. If you look at the heat distribution, if you look at the channels of attack, a lot of our attack is going up that left wing through Jorgeya nowadays. Chico was very quiet in terms of driving the ball forward. He would collect the ball at times as like a false 9, or he would take the ball and move it out to the right, but very few balls went out the far right from Amos to Chico, but everything seems to be a cross. We need to find some players that are comfortable with their back to goal, stay in the center channel, find a passing option, and then take a look at goal. But then also too, Jason, we talked about this last night, they're not playing fast enough, right? They're fast. Like, the players have speed in them. And then when they are in transition, they can do things. But the reality is when the ball is coming in quickly, it seems like every single one of these players needs a second touch. They need to control the ball. They're not comfortable one-timing it, whether it's a volley. There was an opportunity for Chico last night where he could have just put his foot out, deflected the ball, and had a look at net. Instead, he collected it, wanted to move it over to his right foot, try to set it. The Pittsburgh Riverhounds defenders collapsed on him. The ball deflected back out to Jorgeya, who took a shot first time, but from an impossible XG angle. I mean, not an impossible XG angle for Burton Jackson, but an impossible angle for Quizera. And like
he did score against was it Louisville there last year? But yeah, it's a very difficult.
But we're just playing slow right now. We don't have comfortability of collecting passes, one touch timing. And I think that's a problem with the possession, the build-up play. We don't, because we're not in this transition attack anymore. It's like there's this comfortability. I need to have the ball. I need to know the ball. I need to understand what breakfast the ball wants, and then I'm going to send the ball on its way. And that's a problem right now because we're not playing up to speed. So I think we need to look at central passing. I think we need to be a little bit cleaner on one touch, and we have to be comfortable with keeping the ball on the ground. We saw at length J.J. Williams getting beat up in this game prior to his red card. Everything was going over the top. Everything was in the air. I didn't see many passes on the ground into the mixer. And granted, we have the tallest players in the league. But if they're not able to connect, we're going to talk about set piece goals in a little bit. Spoiler alert, it's not a great number. Then we either need to get that online or we need to do something else.
Absolutely.
And then final question of the mailbag tonight is, if we miss the playoffs, this is from Joe P. If we miss the playoffs, but we win the Jägermeister Cup, can we consider this year a success because we took some hardware?
Absolutely. I think that early on in the season, you would maybe say no, in the sense that, we're coming off the way last year ended and we had probably higher expectations. Where we are at this point right now, I mean, even a Jägermeister feels like it's going to be an uphill battle for us at this point. But I would absolutely consider that a success. It's trophy, and there's also what is it? Is it $1 million? Like there's a cash reward that comes along.
I don't think it's $1 million. I think it's like 50,000.
I think it's more than 50,000.
I'm just kidding. I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's not
it's a good chunk of change. Maybe 100,000. It's not. There's a sizable return that comes with it.
William Lambs is basically saying it's just like the Tottenham Spurs. We're going to Spurs it. I will say this. Chuck asks a question. We'll talk about this right now. Word on the street is Koke is close to a return. Could we see him on Wednesday or Saturday? I'm of the firm belief that we will see both him and Haribo re-enter this squad this week. The question becomes, do you bring them in a little bit earlier to offset some of the rest that other players need? Jackson Lee, I don't think he's a player that needs the rest. So in Vegas's case, like if he needs even the extra 3 days, extend him the courtesy, let him be ready for the Saturday match. Haribo, if we have someone in the midfield that needs rotation and he's ready, you could see him come in early, get 60 minutes, and then not see him available for Saturday if he needs to go through that rest and recuperation. My guess is we'll see both of those players on Saturday, but knowing what the needs are for Coach Kano to try to do something to get points, we could see them as early as Wednesday. But my betting guess is it's going to be Saturday for this one here.
Tim confirms it's 100K. When I say it out loud, a million sounds too much, but yeah, it's 100K is still not nothing. That's like
I feel like
top
$1 million
player's salary.
$1 million would probably pay for 60% of your USL championship squad.
Yeah, probably.
I would want to win that every year then. All right. So are you ready to get into this recap?
Let's do it.
Are you sure? This is going to be painful.
Hey, just like last time.
All right. So RIFC does get lily-balled, falling to the Riverhounds 2-0 in a somewhat decent first half before things quickly went off the rails after an Augie William goal in the 51st minute, followed quickly by a Burton Jackson worldie just 6 minutes later.
Ironically, that was Augie's 80th goal.
We talked about that.
Yeah, a milestone in terms of he's now the third highest goal scorer of all time in the USL. And Jackson's goal, well, that was his first goal this year. And guess who he got his first goal against last year against?
I mean, I got the notes right here, but spoiler alert, it's Rhode Island.
So it was bound to happen, I guess.
Of course. And then, beyond the goals, things went from bad to worse. J.J. Williams picks up the red card in the 69th minute. And despite Kano rotating out 5 players, including Rivera finally getting the minutes, sizable minutes of that, Kevin Vang getting his first USL Championship regular season minutes of the season. The damage had already been done, leaving Kano's 10-man side with a lot of soul searching on the night. Fun fact about the red cards, that's now the 4th red card in Rhode Island FC's regular season play. We're now second worst in red card accumulation, but when you include Open Cup and all the others, we're the highest team in there. We're actually even beating Hartford Athletic, who right now has the most red cards accumulated. They got a lot in Jägermeister Cup as well, but it's not looking good on that side of things.
Yeah, so that was our 10th loss of the season. And it's also the 10th time that RIFC have failed to score a goal. A league worst record. Hey, we're setting records here, right?
Never said they were going to be good ones.
Yeah. And over the last month, we've been scored out 11-4, and no player on the team has more than 2 goals in regular season
That
play.
is crazy. That we talked about that stat when we made the own goal player joke at the end of June. I know July was pretty lifeless, but the fact that no player in regular season has scored more than 2 goals, that's the stat you need to know. That's the takeaway stat there. And I mean, thinking about it beyond that, to pile on, Kano's team now sits on just 0.67 goals per game. 0.67. Normally we start to panic when we're like at 1 and like 1.2. We're at 0.67. It's the second worst in the league. We have a 0.94 PPG, which is worst in the league. We're third worst in big chances created, and that's all on a 24% win rate with just 4 wins in the regular season play. Jason, this is bad. There's no way of going around it anymore. We have to acknowledge Rhode Island FC is a wicked bad soccer team. They're just bad.
We can't give this much ammunition to Hartford. They're gonna turn up with wicked bad soccer.
Hey, listen, Hartford, for all of what we don't want to talk about, they blanked New Mexico United last week 4-0. I mean, we kind of mentioned it. They're in the right trajectory. I mean,
at the end of this week, they could be above us. Honestly, I feel like it's a very good chance they could, unless we really see some like turnaround from this team.
All right. Well, before we go into the particulars, let's at least start with how Coach Kano constructed this team for the trip to Pittsburgh in Highmark Stadium.
Yeah. So if you saw the broadcast, it was definitely a 4-4-2, and it wasn't. Spoiler. I think our team changes so much that the USL just doesn't know what we're doing, and they just throw players in there and like, I don't know, this looks like it.
I mean, Fatmob had Okiyoshi, I think, on the starting 11 in its initial burst out.
They also only have us listed at 17 games because they never updated this game in there.
Right. It was
there's like that weird
cancel.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, Jackson Leonette, Ugo Bacharach, Ame Mabika, Karifa Yao, as a like kind of a back 3 there. Out on like right midfield, right wing back, we had Amos Shapiro Thompson, Maxi Rodriguez, and Marky Barra as those 2 center midfielders, with Jojea Quazera out on the left, with a front 3 there of Chico, JJ Williams, and Noah Fuson.
The good old 3-4-3 era. That's what we're entering. That's our RIFC era. It's the 3-4-3. First off, again, scratching my head, we've got Rivera on the bench. Don't know why we don't play him. Whatever. Amos Shapiro Thompson, he's our new Lord and Savior. He is the right wing back. I don't have anything against it, but like, you also have Rivera ready to go. He knows the Pittsburgh system. You need a right back, a right wing back, a right something, and you still choose Amos Shapiro Thompson. Now, granted, in a 3-4-3, traditionally you want a little bit more of a midfield opportunity there, but you have all these fullbacks on the bench. You know that this game is going to be a defensive battle. Did we kind of cut ourselves off at the knee because we decided we weren't going to employ our normal full amount of defenders that we have available to us?
And so like AST did do better than I expected in that position. I think similarly to Clay Holstad this year, he's shown us that he's just an incredibly hard worker. He'll go out there and give 100%, right? He was out there fighting. And funny enough, I think he was the only one on the right side who really gave us any of that fight. If you go back and look where we were attacked, they attacked us a lot on that side, because the problem too is, while Chico sometimes creates good chances as a right winger, he isn't a right winger, and positionally he was tucked too far in because he's a striker, and so he just naturally kept moving in. So there's this kind of big gap there that we left open on the right.
Both of the goals came from the right side.
Both of the goals came from the right side. And so at that point, like, would playing a natural right-sided player like Danny Rivera have helped keep us a better like shape and structure to maybe not make us so vulnerable? I mean, it's hard to say.
But that's the argument, right? We have natural position players, and Rio Hope Gunn can be a right back. Danny Rivera can be a right back or a right wing back. we've got Jojea Quazera, who, despite the fact that he's a left midfielder, we've absolutely treated him for extended periods of his playing time as a left wing back. We know that when these players go up, there's always the liability to be, attacked on the transition. But we saw that right away. We knew it was going to happen with Jackson lining up in this formation. It's just kind of curious that it's almost like we put ourselves in that. We were doomed to fail by the way we set that up. Not to take away from AST. I think despite a very questionable yellow card, I think he put in the work. But sometimes we talked last year, did Bob Lilly outcoach Connor Smith on that 2-0 loss in the end of 2024 that disrupted our 8-game win streak that we had at the time? We thought maybe that was one of the few times that he wasn't prepared. Kind of feels this time around again, Connor Smith returning after his red card suspension last week in the Jaeger Cup, kind of felt like, again, he didn't really have answers on this match. I mean, we look at the substitutions. They all come in the 75th minute. You see 4 of 5 players come in at that point. I don't think we've ever seen a 4-player rotation change before, but that was after 2 goals against. That was after Williams came off the pitch. I'm not quite sure if he needed to extend the time knowing that there was a midweek game and kind of get the minutes where he needed, but it just felt like Kano didn't have any answers to respond to the 2 goals from Bob Lilly's side. Any final thoughts on this roster before we move on?
I mean, I kind of like to see the 3-back line back again. There were a few opportunities in the first half because the first half ended even 0-0, and it didn't feel like either team was superior. It felt as like, cool, we've got another 0-0 draw coming up, and then you know what? With how good Pittsburgh has been, that's fair. I would have taken it. There were a few kind of glimpses of what we saw in the past where this team was being direct and they were almost playing transition soccer again. But it just wasn't enough. And maybe that is from rust of not playing this style in a while.
We've never played a 3-4-3 before.
But also at the same time, it's really not that much different from a 3-5-2.
I agree to a certain extent, but having Chico out in a untucked right
that's
wing,
the main difference
new.
Is the attack up there is where you have the modification. Instead of having a central attacking midfielder, you have 2 wingers and a striker. And the reality is Chico is not a winger. While he can drift out into the right side at times in our attack and create good chances, because he's actually I think the second highest chance creator on this team, ironically. That's not his natural position. And he kept tucking in too much. And we've talked about it in the past. Chico and JJ together, for some reason, it just doesn't work.
The broadcast team, and I agreed with them, continued to say that it felt like we were kind of absent in the center of the pitch. We didn't have any commanding presence there to collect second balls.
And that's what a Cam could help.
So I think personally we had too many forward attacking players, which is a weird thing to say, almost as if I know how bad we are at scoring goals. But the reality is maybe we had too many on the pitch at that time. I think one more center midfielder really would have helped this team not just be forced into doing one of 2 things, route one, or just going up that left flank. We just didn't seem to be able to change directions. We didn't seem able or comfortable to hold the ball for periods of time. So we're not possession, and we really only had one kind of basic attack ready to go. It just didn't feel like it was enough on the night. Speaking of which, though, I want to get right into this. RIFC, Jason, have never won against the Riverhounds. Never done it. It's never been done, and we've never...
To clarify, in the regular season.
Yeah, and scored. So, yeah, we've never scored. We've never won against the Riverhounds in the regular season. What do we have to do and change this? Because it cannot continue. Riverhounds cannot be one of our biggest pain points. That's supposed to be Detroit City FC, which are coming into town next week, or this week, excuse me. It's not supposed to be.
I thought it was Loudon.
Which is at the end of the week. Yeah, this is a problematic week. I don't think we really built this up to what it is. I know the smart fans. I know the sickos that are here listening to us live. They know how problematic this particular week is. Spoiler alert, then we've got Lou City and Charleston right afterwards. So this is a great month to be a fan of RIFC. But I don't think we realized how many of the teams we have in a row that have had our number for the entirety of our team playing soccer in the USL Championship. What do we have to do? I mean, we've seen this team now more than any team across all competitions. That'll change by the end of the season. But as of right now, The team we've seen the most also seems to have our clock mostly. Granted that Jägermeister Cup win. What do we do for the future how do we defeat the Bob Lilly without becoming the Bob Lilly?
I mean, that's kind of how it worked out in the Jägermeister Cup. Is it felt like we, like if you remember that game, we got the ball to Chico. Chico harassed the back line, would take the foul, go down, and we slow the game down. And
so we have to slow the game down. Chico has to fall a lot and get beat up. Okay.
And you have to just get one lucky goal, or maybe score a set piece goal. I don't know.
It's interesting to me. I think the thing that I want to talk about that problem, though, is all night the broadcast team kept calling us the Giants, just in height, not in actual scoring ability. But they continuously talked about the height advantages, and you could see it. I mean, we all see it with our eyeballs every time we watch this team. We have a very tall back line. We have a very tall team. Connor Smith, I think he'll never say it out loud, but like he probably has a recruiting penchant for making sure that he gets tall boys into this squad. Like he does a player interview and it's the best winger in the world. He's like, "How tall are you?" Like, "I'm 5'5". Like, "Hey, I'm sorry. There's a home for you in Miami FC, but here we like our wingers 6'3" at a minimum." So I'm not saying that it's wrong, but when you look at that and you continue to see this effort and this emphasis on the height of our players, why are we not producing more goals from set pieces? And Jason, how many, by the way, remind me, have we produced from set pieces in regular play?
0.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
0. We have, if you count Jägermeister Cup, we have 1 set piece goal. But in the regular season, 0 set piece goals.
That's a problem.
Despite having a bunch of tall dudes.
That's a problem. We got to get that online. We talk about the simplicity. We talk about them being able to take advantage. If these crosses, and that's where I kind of wanted to tie it back into the opening statement here, if these crosses are what we're going to do as a team, we got to start finding the ball to the player head and get it in the net, or we need to figure something else out. And I don't know if it's the way, we looked at the set piece tactics last night, how they all stayed clustered together, would run near post, would run far post as like a group. The idea being if the ball can get somewhere in that, gyration of heads, the ball has a good chance of going in. We talked like when you have that much height, is it actually better to spread your players around in the box so that they can collect any stray, or if the ball doesn't go quite the direction and trajectory that, the corner taker wanted it to be. We've talked at length about, what does that need to be, but I don't see the set piece tactics improving. I've seen them improve defensively to a certain extent, but I haven't seen them improve offensively. What in your past, you're the expert between the two of us. How do teams normally improve their set pieces besides hiring and signing an even taller player?
Like hiring a set piece coach, honestly. At that point, I don't know.
Do we know who is in charge? It's probably just Kano, right? Working with McKay and Aguarte.
Possibly. I don't know in terms of like in the coaching roster who would be the designated kind of like set piece person. Generally, to have a set piece coach is very much something that, maybe is only for clubs who have the resources to do so. At this point, there's probably a little bit of double duty running there where coaches are having to kind of wear multiple hats, if you will, to take care of things like that.
Mike asks, how many have we allowed from set pieces? I know of 4, but I have stopped counting since. I imagine, and I'd have to spread that from cup play versus regular play, but I know of at least 4 that we've allowed this season. 5, you count the Joe Farrell to TJ Prestis Hartford Athletic goal last week. So let's just say 4 to 5, but I'm sure it's actually like 10 to 12. Let's get into the.
I mean, oddly enough, though, we're still like
4th best defense in the league, baby.
Yeah.
Maybe 5th after this game. But
we,
all right.
We lose a lot, but not by much.
Oh man, look at this big bold font here. I gotta ease up on the caps next time. Lee, we saw a new dimension of Jackson Lee. Very first time I can recall this. There's no more playing out the back with Jackson Lee in a back 3. It was route 1 90% of the time. We know that he had that in his wheelhouse last season. I think back to like the great goal where he linked up with Chico in the second game ever against Tampa, or third game ever against Tampa Bay Rowdies. We know he has that in his skill set. But has coach abandoned playing out the back? Has he abandoned that starting possession? And why did he do it now? Is it because we had JJ Williams back as a starter? Because we didn't really do much with the second balls. Lee sometimes missed his targets. Wasn't always a great thing, but it seems like for all intent, we've given up on playing out the back.
I wonder if part of that is just the fact that Koke is still out, and that was kind of Koke's specialty. Lee was doing a very good job of doing his best to kind of do a Koke impression in that regards, but maybe this just suits them better and allows them to not have that back line harried so much by immediately being put under pressure. On the fact that like we do have JJ Williams like a good target forward to be able to kind of control the ball, pass it back to a midfielder and then try and go out wide.
It looked like we were trying to create different opportunities and chances from where we needed to be when it came to how we set up, not playing out the back, right? Not trying to build that slow start and go from left to right and then right to left. So it was exciting to see. That being said, is this going to be the future of how we see this set up? Like, do we think we'll see more Route 1 with Lee until Vegas comes back? And even when Vegas shows up, do we think that we'll see Vegas adopt a Route 1 strategy as well?
It's possible. We know that Vegas is also, pretty decent at long balls as well too. He can kind of easily hit a 30-40 yard pass and be on target fairly high percentage of time. I mean, maybe this is Kano just trying to kind of evolve the tactics as we go forward. And I'm fine with that because what's been employed so far hasn't been working. But at this point, you kind of, if this is what you're going to do, like you now have to just stick with it for the rest of the year because you can't like give it a few games, excuse me, and then just like go back.
I mean, that's true. We've talked at length with players like Ame about at this point, it's less about chop and change, especially tactically, and more about finding that what works and then sticking with it. Don't know yet if we'll see that happen, but I think it's something we're going to have to keep our eye on because as we start to focus more on a Route 1 strategy, that could lead to lack of possession. Then we could see a completely different change. Like you don't need a back four when you're not playing a possession style system, right? Like you can allow those wingers, you can allow those players on the drifting sides to kind of advance because you're really there to collect and contain versus having outlets to redistribute the ball and recycle it.
I mean, we've said before, like we think that this team is better without possession. So
agreed. I agree. We'll see what happens in the next couple games to go if Kano continues to experiment or if he's found his tactic that he wants in the future. Want to get into the next one here. Lots of soft yellows here on this season, but there was no more so than this particular game. And then an absolute red card with JJ Williams. First and foremost, we saw it. The broadcast called it. There were a lot of yellows that probably shouldn't have been yellows on this match for both teams. And then after you set that baseline from head ref Matt Thompson, a lot of other tactical fouls that didn't get yellow cards for the issuance of whatever that was going on. Did the ability for the ref to manage this game kind of take away from Rhode Island being able to play what they wanted to play?
It's weird. I thought that the ref was like, it felt to begin with that he was being consistent with his fouls. But then as the game went on, it started to question.
When Augie Williams got his like fourth warning instead of just finally getting put in the book, which then ironically goes and gets the goal to give Pittsburgh Riverhounds the go-ahead.
Yeah, especially I think the most egregious was probably that Amos Shapiro-Thompson foul that just looked like a foul, just coming together. I don't know, unless he said something to him.
Amos
to warrant that, and like I don't really buy that's how that went down. And to me, that was like his first challenge, and it wasn't even a bad challenge. So he was reffing a very strict game, but then being loose in some regards that I just kind of didn't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I know we try to avoid bringing the ref into the narrative as much as possible. Obviously, Rhode Island FC had their chances on the night and failed to capitalize. So it's not like we can just blame one particular thing. That being said, I want to tell you, we've got 42 yellow cards now in the books this year across all regular season performances. Who is the most at risk right now of a yellow card accumulation disciplinary suspension?
I mean, based upon last year's, it was Clay. I'll just guess that it's Clay again.
So it's a good instinct. He does have, I think, 4 or 5 yellow cards so far on the season. However, they have been spaced out to the right amount to get that reversal, that Uno green reversal card. And he's actually had all of them rescinded. So he's back down to 1, maybe 2. The player at risk, there could be 2 players actually at risk. One, Amos Shapiro-Thompson, currently on 4 consecutive yellow cards. So he is very much getting closer and closer to that danger line of a game suspension. But then there's also Mark Ibarra, who inherited a couple of yellow cards earlier in the season before his injury. I don't know if you get green card reversals for any game or if you have to dress and be on the bench in order to get it. Like, I don't know if injuries roll
maybe
back your clock.
You're not exempt from it if you're not playing because you're injured.
I don't know. So that'll be something. If the injury time has not completely washed all of his cards, he's somewhere between 4 and 2 yellow cards. Then right now he should be at 4, given the amount of playing time he's had. But again, that's separate. So if anyone's smarter than us, which should be just about everybody on this chat right now, if you guys know the rules, that's where Mark Ibarra is. But Amos Shapiro-Thompson, the one closest to knocking on the door of a suspension. So exciting times there. Jason, I want to ask this question. I talked about it kind of at the beginning. We're not playing fast enough.
Absolutely not.
How do we fix that?
By playing faster.
Perfect. I think Kano needs you.
There we go.
You can be the set piece coach and the fast enough coach at the same time. It's perfect. But seriously, I mean, what do? You have these professional players. They should have the ability to handle the ball at this level of competition. And it seems like it's not quite there. We have long balls that don't find the player, passes that are too heavy, passes that are too short, passes that like the player's just not confident, one timing, one touch and go. What do we do?
I mean, part of this maybe goes back to another thing we talked about earlier in regards to a solution. If you are being played in a position that maybe you are not comfortable in, you would then be occupying, as you move forward up the field, you'd be occupying potentially spaces that you're still not comfortable with, right? If you are not a right wing back and you are moving up the field and you start to find yourself in that, second half of the field, that final third, you're hugging that right corner, you're being asked to turn and catch passes that you would, as opposed to maybe you're a midfielder and you normally drive up the middle of the field, and it's different. And you're the one playing those passes out to someone. And it's like, I know how to pass to where I am. I'm not usually here to receive that pass. And so we're putting guys in uncomfortable, awkward positions. So they're not playing with that like sense of freedom and comfortability because they don't maybe fully understand how to be that position, that player. They can hold it down if there's an injury or it's a sub in for 10 minutes and say, nothing fancy, block that right side, get the ball, pass it back in, and just, don't give up another goal or something, as opposed to like, no, I need you for 90 minutes to attack that right side. I need you to drive the ball forward. I need you to create chances. I need you to, cut in or whatever. And when you're like, well, that's not what I do. I will, because of the type of player I'm, I'll go out there and do my best. But
I agree. And there's some tough questions ahead, depending on the results for these next 2 games. Honestly, we're going to have some really awkward, hard conversations to ask Kano. I've seen a lot of the different reporters and people that cover this club start to kind of get attacked online about, are we asking the tough questions? Chat, I'll encourage, don't do it now because we won't go back and read it. But at the end of the recording tonight, throw in what questions you think are the most worthy of being asked of Coach Kano, and we'll consider whether we want to put our professional careers in front of him on the line. But it's getting tough. It's getting tough to figure out what Kano needs to do and how he needs to both adjust this team, but then at the same time, keep as much of it the same as possible for consistency's sake. And I just don't have the answers right now. And I don't think Kano does either. And from that perspective, when we look at where do we go from here, we're getting towards the end of the season. I know we're past the halfway point. We can say there are both plenty of games left at 13, but we're also starting to creep towards that clock, right? It's starting to run out. Historically, teams in the Eastern Conference to make it into the playoffs have needed 45.8 points to advance into playoff rounds. And that's 8th place, by the way. That's not a solid middle of the table, middle playoff performance. That's 8th place. When you look at that number comes from over the last 5 years of performances. And I'll tell you this right now. Remember earlier, 0.94 PPG. No team has ever made it into the championship playoffs with less than 1 point per game.
Yeah, I guess the one like caveat I would say there is there are 4 less games this year,
You
which
stole
is
my notes, you son of a gun.
12 points less. Sorry, I also doubled up on notes you already put higher up in the, so I'm just
This is what happens when you have too many podcasts you have to do in a single week.
yeah, we're doubling up on it. But at that point, you would think probably not a 1-to-1 ratio of like, well, everyone's going to be dropped 12 points. So I mean, I'm going to guess
we're going to drop 12 points.
No, I was going to say is like I'm going to guess like 36 points would get you in 8th place potentially. I mean, do you feel that that's 9 points less than normal, right?
Yeah, I think I think that would be if you just do the math calculation. Yeah, because you'd look at about 12 points less, but then give or take some swing performances.
Yeah.
Ideally, the number that we now need to look at rather than trying to do the magic number, which probably means we need to elevate our PPG or our points per game to 1.23 just to create that safe barrier. I think the easier way to earmark this is we need to win about half of our remaining matches. That's probably the sweet spot. We could, in theory, draw every match left and get in the same way, but that is such an unreliable way to go through it. And there are so many difficult teams ahead of us that we have not performed well against, or they are performing way above their normal weight class. They're punching very far above, or they just are the heavyweights of this Eastern Conference. I think that reality, we talk about, is August kind of the do or die month for us? It's not so much that it's August, but it's really the fact that we need about 6 wins here to carry us over the 8th place positioning line. If we can't get those 6-ish wins, I think the season will not go the way Rhode Island FC fans want. Please let us know in the chat if you think that there's something different to that. But I just think that that's the reality here at the moment of those minimum ones. And honestly, if this team can pick up those minimum sets of wins, the math will start shaking out. But the question is, can they pull it off?
That's the $1 million question there.
Sure. Certainly is. So let's get into these previews for Detroit City FC. Try to wash away this bad taste in our mouth. Hope that Coach Cano knows what he's doing, can turn things around for this club in these next 2 games, home at Centerville Bank Stadium. We need some wins in front of the crowds here in Pawtucket.
I mean, at least some goals would be nice too.
Goals lead to wins, baby. So let's make sure that's how it goes. But let's get into these Eastern Conference standings. RIFC have only scored 3 goals in their last 5 matches and are winless in their last 5. Currently on a 4-5-9 record in 10th place on the outside looking in. Even though Detroit also has spent a majority of their season on the road, they sit in 6th place on a 5-6-6 record with 21 points and a game in hand. They've only won 1 in their last 5, indicating a dip in performance. And similar to RIFC, they might be showing a little bit better of a track record away, as they're 3-4-3 away this season versus their 2-3-2 record. That's great that would normally be great news to hear for a home team hosting a team that is doing better away. Unfortunately, we're talking about Centerville Bank Stadium, a place that we have both struggled to secure goals and points all season. So just on the lineups, just on the predictive analysis and the outcomes, Detroit City already is kind of taking this over the top. They look like the team they've already won this game, basically.
Yeah, like you had mentioned, they're actually the 3rd best away team in the East behind Louisville and Charleston.
Fantastic.
I mean, to be fair, I should mention that outside of those top 2, though, the East is not very good this year. So they're very much, 12. It's like 12 points from 10 games. That somehow gets them in 3rd. This team, RAFC, has kind of been better away, except for, after what happened last night. But 10 from 10. The East is really weird this year. They're really struggling. And yeah, it's weird because Detroit it felt like last year to a certain extent, it's kind of a fortress for them, right? But they only have 9 points from 7 home matches this year. So they're kind of having a weird season here. Ironically and unfortunately, 3 of those 9 points came from beating us earlier this year.
You're welcome.
Historically, when we look at this matchup, we've not really done well against Detroit. Last year where that was that 1-1 away draw on CBS, it was kind of a bit of an exciting game, but ultimately a draw. at the end of the day there. And then that 2-0 home loss where Detroit felt comfortably the better team, and it kind of never felt like we were ever in it. And, then when we move on to this year, like I'd kind of just prefaced here, April 10th, we saw No Darcy sent off in the 6th minute into the match. I remember initially, a lot of us were kind of frustrated that the angle from the live view did not look great until a photographer who was at the match shared some angles that were like, oh,
showed the what is it, the Undertaker choke slam, just bad.
It showed some other angles like, oh yeah, okay, no, he deserved that. And so Detroit is
photo is worth 1,000 red cards, apparently. Who knew? Who knew?
So at that point we were out of that. There wasn't really anything we could do. They're one of 3 remaining teams in the Eastern Conference that we've failed to secure a victory in the regular season. Just quickly recapping that game, after No Darcy gets sent off, Darren Smith picks up a brace within 2 minutes, scoring in the 17th and the 19th minute respectively. RIFC limp back into the locker room. Coach makes a change, and we kind of shift our tactics, and you do see a bit of life in the team. Similarly, how we mentioned there was that last 10, 15 minutes against Pittsburgh where things felt like if we could have been playing this way the whole time, and also with 11 men, maybe there would have been something there. Similarly, RFC started to put something together there in that second half, but ultimately they couldn't really make a difference when it came down to the result.
Yeah, so when we look at Detroit overall, and we try to recap this from game to game to understand, where have they been since the last time we saw them? Since mid-April, Detroit City FC has, I would say, they found a little bit of rhythm, but it was definitely more of an inconsistency. They had somewhat of a shaky start. Then they had this minor run kind of leading up to the points that they nabbed from us, but they haven't really been able to kind of breach into additional point accumulation this season. Head coach Danny Dicchio, he's emphasized a compact defensive organization with a little bit of a pragmatic approach to the way he wants to have his attackers move forward. I would argue that defensively, I didn't really see it. I watched the last 2 games that they played. They didn't really seem as tight as what I expected from this team, from what we saw earlier in the season. Looked a little bit more of a helter-skelter. They like to deploy as either a 3-5-2 or that 4-2-3-1. The team, what they are good at, though, similar to the Riverhounds, they love to grind out low-scoring results, whether it's against them or for them, or it's some sort of draw in between. They love leveraging a press-resistant midfield. So, their midfield is their engine. Their back line is heavily physical, not the same size as Rhode Island FC's bruisers, but nevertheless still kind of that tough squad to break down. They've had a few key wins against playoff caliber teams, but then they've also dropped points against teams that they should have beat. We're talking about Oakland. They should have beaten Oakland. Tampa Bay when they were at their worst. These are teams that probably they regret losing those points to. We've argued at length, Jason, this season that there have been moments where we've played teams where they feel like they're at the peak of their form, and then they have these fall-offs. They have these drops off a cliff, and it's like, man, I want to play the Las Vegas Lights when they're bad, not when they're good. Or, I want to play Oakland Roots when we did earlier this season versus any kind of turnaround with Coach, Benny Feilhaber. Detroit has continued to be the stingiest team in the league, sans Pittsburgh. They very rarely allow multiple goals. And, when you look at this team, kind of like Rhode Island, how we brag about how we carried over so many players year after year, Detroit's very much cut from the same cloth. A lot of their players are centennials when it comes to 100 games or more. We obviously stole Maxi Rodriguez from them a little earlier this year, but they just had another player announced. I think it was Diop, who got his 100th match. Now, granted, they count that from their time in Nisa, but they have 7 or 8 players who have collected 100 appearances with Detroit City FC. So while this is both a veteran team and then they still go out and find the pieces they need, there's that veteran core locker room presence and that stability that allows them to be who they are as their identity. Like I said, though, they're a cagey team. Most of the matches ending 1-0 this year, 0-0 or 1-1. The team is constructed around some dynamic moments, a lot of goals coming from set pieces. Not surprising. A lot of times last year, Most of the goals from Detroit came from dead ball situations. But like you said, Jason, they've only picked up 7 points since we last faced them. That's a pretty rough spot to be in. They crashed out of the Open Cup after losing to the Chicago Fire 4-0. They crashed out of Jägermeister Cup when they failed to get past the Hearts of Pine. They had an opportunity to go for the wild card spot. I don't know if they would have with all the different tiebreakers, but they were at least in the hunt. And again, they've only won 1 match out of their last 5, almost winless in July. Some things haven't been going Detroit's way. And unfortunately, due to a result of these kinds of poor string of performances, Detroit earlier this month in July, they announced the departure of sporting director Trevor James, who's been with the team since its inauguration. So now their sporting director is on the outside looking in. He's parted ways, and they're looking for a new one there. That kind of has me wondering, can Danny Dichio do this for the rest of the season? Can he find what this team needs to be and go out and secure a playoff berth? They feel like they're a team that's going to do that. They've just reinforced this last week with Kobe Hernandez-Foster. Curious to see what kind of contribution he makes. There are players on this team that we've only seen them really get sizable minutes in Jägermeister Cup matches and Open Cup matches. Players like Sebastian Guenzati, who, a year ago, he would have been a starter for just about any championship side, now often kind of coming off the bench as a support weapon. It'll be interesting if they can stop the bleed, figure out how to advance forward and solidify themselves on the table. I think they're going to do it. The question is, does it come through the expense of Rhode Island FC for a second time this season?
Possibly. We will figure out here tomorrow.
Let's get through the injury report since we don't have ref assignments because it's still too early. That doesn't come out till tomorrow. But you still have the same players injured. Grant Stoneman should be back in about a week, at least on the timetables the physio gave. We've got Zach Haribo questionable. I think he's ready to play based on the conversations I've had, but it's really just the question of, does he get the minutes in this Wednesday matchup, or do we see him return on the Saturday game? Frank Nodarse with that hamstring, we have not yet confirmed what his ETA is yet. I don't know, with a grade 1 mild hamstring, assuming that's what it is. I'm just saying, what's the best case scenario? I think that's at least usually 2 to 3 weeks.
Few weeks, yeah.
So I still think we probably won't see him. And then Koke Vegas is in the same camp as Haribo. We should be seeing him this week based on the timelines we've been shared. Will it be on the Wednesday match because we can get a keeper in earlier, or will we see him reserved for the Saturday game? All bets are there. Didn't find anything in the Detroit City camp. Went on some of their news sites, went on some of their reporters. Didn't see any players of note that were out, but who knows what happens between, now and the game on Wednesday. Jason, let's talk about this RIFC lineup. Guaranteed to be wrong. We're kind of sticking with a little bit of a 3-4-3 because we figure if coach saw something in that, he's one less player now in availability. Maybe he'll still kind of can see that through. Will we see more of the 3-4-3 this week?
Yeah, and I think we're gonna, like I'd mentioned earlier when we talked about this formation, they're very much similar, but kind of maybe thinking here more of a 3-4-1-2 or 3-5-2, if you will. We're gonna stick with Jackson Lee into the net until we see Koke. Like you mentioned, we think he's pretty soon here, but we're not sure exactly whether that will be this Wednesday or potentially Saturday, if not even further away. Ugo Bacharach, Karifa Yao, and Ame Mabika will shore up that back 3 there. Looking at a midfield 4 here of Shapiro Thompson out on the right again, with Clay Holstad, Mark Ibarra as those 2 center midfielders. Jojea Quezera out on the left. We think we'll have coach push Maxi Rodriguez a little further up there to maybe try and get involved in the attack, having him play behind a striker partnership of Chico and Noah Fuson, obviously with JJ Williams being out due to red card suspension.
I mean, the argument here is, we talked at length about the midfield trio last season and what it would look like with Maxi's emergence into the squad. Right now, the roster's somewhat depleted in that midfield. No Zach Haribo to argue, who would be the 3 with Bacharach needed on the back line. There's more likely a chance that it is some version of this. Would you rather see Holstead in the forward attacking role? I personally think that he's better a little bit deeper, whereas, Maxi can be a bit more of a chameleon.
I think you want Clay a little further back to give you that solidity so that you don't look like you're getting your midfield run through like we saw against Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And then when you look at the roster depletion now, also including the loaned out players, bit short on that reserve bench that we have with Kevin Vang, Joe Brito, Cole Dewhurst, Aldair Sanchez, Rio Hope Gunn, Danny Rivera and Will Meyer. We don't have, suddenly we thought we had all these stars ready to come in, be available to change the game, but now we're kind of also back to, we don't have a single player available beyond what we know in the injury list right now. We're basically a depleted squad once more. Still unclear if Dwayne Busy Atkinson will be available for this match. I haven't heard anything. We haven't seen a news press release from the club yet officially, so chances are of that happening before Wednesday, probably pretty slim. Could we see it as early as the Saturday game? That'll all come down to whether a Friday press goes out or not. So I just don't know if he'll be available. I know a lot of people are curious to see if he can have an impact here on this match. Getting into the Detroit City FC side, a couple of changes here from the last time we saw them. Possibly 4. I mean, again, these are all speculations, but possibly 4 changes that we're predicting in their lineup. They do play in the 3-4-2-1 themselves, and we've got in net Carlos Saldana with a back 3 of Michael Bryant, Shane White, Devin Amu-Amensa, and then in that midfield, you're going to have newcomer Haruki Yamazaki, Jay Chapman, Ryan Williams, and Alex Villanueva. That midfield pairing, you're going to see Jasael Sedno and then Alassane Diouf. Diouf is probably most likely going to be the replacement on that left side, and then Darren Smith, the lone striker up top.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see if, Connor Rutz and maybe Sebastian Guinzotti kind of have any impact on the game. You mentioned that in other circumstances, like Guinzotti would potentially be a starter. And then on top of that, Kobe Hernandez Foster, we know Kaler is a huge fan of him, and
the biggest.
He speaks very highly of him. So it'd be interesting to see if he can kind of work his way into this team and what kind of role he might play.
Yeah, and then for the scouting report, we've got 3 players for you. We talked about Jay Chapman last time, but just to kind of remind people, he's a central attacking midfielder, an excellent Canadian international product from the Toronto FC side. He's got MLS and CPL experience. So he's both a veteran of North American soccer, but he's just also a really good creative player. For those of you that don't know, Chapman was on loan from Hartford down to Charleston Battery last year, and he was a major problem for Rhode Island FC every time we saw him. So Chapman is a player to watch. He's got excellent vision, clever in passing in tight areas, and an ability to kind of break out. We talk about sometimes you need the overload, sometimes you need the triangle to work around a press. Chapman can sometimes create something out of nothing, something we've wanted to see. When you think about it, he's kind of the Maxi Rodriguez replacement to a certain extent. I know they had him higher, but Chapman kind of came in to fill at least a certain role of Rodriguez, and he's done a pretty good job of that. So far in 2025, he's played a key in connecting the midfield to the front line, contributing with assists and an occasional goal. But he's really that, where you're going to watch him shine in this game is he's a late box runner. He's going to collect that second ball, that third run, what have you, and see if he can make anything dangerous of an opportunity. So watch for him there. He's going to be helping lead the attack, whether it's from the back seat or the front, and it's just going to be something that Rhode Island FC is going to need to lock down in that midfield.
Yeah, and then we got to mention Darren Smith, the striker forward, central striker. He scored 2 goals against us earlier this year. He's a South African forward with experience in Europe and Africa, joined Detroit City in 2024 and quickly became their primary goal scorer there. He's quick, direct, and clinical in front of goal. He excels at making diagonal runs behind defenders, pressing high, finishing from both in and outside of the box. He's leading the team in goals or near the top here, often scoring in key moments. His pace stretches defense and creates space for midfielders to operate. And, he is the focal point of Detroit City FC's attack. So when he is in form, they're obviously going to be much sharper, but that's going to have that cutting edge and more likely to be able to come out with a result there.
Yeah, and then the third player I've got is Michael Bryant. He's a CDM by trade, but he's been kind of in a center back capacity over the last few seasons, kind of filling in as a central defender. He's been a longtime fan favorite of this Detroit City side. Again, I don't know if he's one of the Centennials, but he's up there. He's been there since the Nisa days. He's the guy you don't want to get tackled from when you're your Quizera or your Chico, or if you saw him trying to run through him. He's probably going to be the player the most trying to challenge for aerial duels for any set pieces or dead ball situations. But he's just probably the most physical player. And, when you're that kind of a veteran, it comes with, seasoned experience, right? You're going to be calm under pressure. You're going to help lead the team and organize it from that back line. He's not afraid to move up the field when he's got the ball at his feet. If he has the opportunity, he's still going to be a reserved, player on the back line, but kind of reminds me of like a Hugo Bacharach, where he's not afraid. If there's no passing sequence, like, okay, well, I'll take the ball some other direction. It'd be exciting to see, but he's definitely going to be the player that coach trusts to kind of keep this back line solid. Again, though, I've seen problems with Detroit City over these last few matches, a little bit more emergency defending than I would expect from a team that's hoping to put a deep playoff run in front of them. So it'll be curious to see how he lines up with his back partners and takes the game on his shoulders. Let's get into these storylines. I'm going to skip around here, Jason, so keep up with me, because there's a comment that we need to address in here. Matthew Jean writes in, Maxie's going to get a brace on Wednesday to stick it to the Northern Guard for calling him Charmin. Listen, the reality is this: when Maxie does have a good game, someone needs to immediately get on the meme machine and create a Harmon Ultra Strong. So get rid of the C and put Maxie in there. Maxie Rodriguez, if you're listening to the pod, maybe give us an image of you, maybe giving the bird, and then we can put that on there as well. So like, let's really lean into this. But Jason, I do want to ask you, is this going to be a different kind of homecoming for Rodriguez after, and he'll admit it when he did his interview with us, that was not the match he wanted to have. That was probably the worst match of the season that he's had. Don't know if it was home field kind of getting to him. It was the memories. It was the Northern Guard, but that was definitely his worst one. Are we going to see a revitalized Maxie Rodriguez?
I mean, I hope so. At this point, he'll be at his new home with his fans backing him, as opposed to, a hostile Northern Guard, if you will. He is one of the few who's actually scored. He's I mean, sure, they're both penalties, but he scored 2 goals at home. Is there maybe a third? I'm trying to remember.
He's got a third in Open Cup in the run-up.
Open Cup, yeah. So, one of the few players who has put a few balls in the back of the net in Centerville. So maybe this can be a good opportunity for him to kind of, show his caliber, show what he can do for us.
I've seen Max. It's such a complete opposite from Ame's interview last week, where Ame said, "I don't let the personal get in the way. I show up. I'm a professional. I get excited for every game." When we talked to Maxie, he said he took it personal, right? He has a bulletin board. He uses the ammunition that's given to him to fuel his game. There's, allegedly that he may have taken that meme and put it as a screensaver on his phone to motivate him to be a little bit extra, tough in his practice sessions. So I imagine he's probably going to play the game of his career against this team now with that chip on his shoulder, or he's going to show the world that, he's let his cage get rattled and there's no coming back from it. Not sure which one it is. The real question is, does Cano even start him? Because if you've noticed, Rodriguez has usually been the first player substituted off if it's not a defender and it's not for yellow card discipline. It's interesting to see that he's normally that player that, like, okay, and granted, we're stacked in the midfield, so if you're going to pull a player, but it's interesting that Rodriguez is normally the first to come off.
I think with JJ being out, you have to.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree. I'm just saying, if JJ wasn't there, it would be interesting to see if he got a start.
Yeah, then we could get into some sort of situation where maybe he doesn't, and then maybe kind of tying into the next one, like with JJ out, like who scores, right?
What player hasn't scored 2 goals yet? That's the real Amos Shapiro Thompson's due for a second goal to tie the.
So we just need one player to have a brace, and that's
I mean, that's what they got.
0 goals. Okay, Ugo, he can get 2.
You know what? All jokes aside, I would love to see 2 goals from set pieces, because it would help reinforce what this team is significantly lacking. Again, going back to 2024, Frank Nodarce was our 3rd best goal scorer, maybe 4th best, but he had 6 goals. Most of them came from set pieces. I think all of them did. That's something that is completely missing in the game this year. I would not mind seeing a Bacharach brace, a Mabika brace, a Yao brace, and getting some goals with those bodies in the mixer, getting it in the box, and let's see what can happen, because we need it. So yeah, I want it. I want a brace from one defender, and I want him to have his Anthony Siaha moment and shush the Northern Guard. That would be fantastic. But I'll ask you then, beyond Williams, when do we think we'll see this roster selection solidify? When do we think we get to, let's say, 70%, no chop and change? You're only adjusting for one player profile or one type of, element that you need to bring into the next match.
I mean, this is the month where you have to do it. I think you have to go through this month and try and maintain a roster as best as you can.
Is it possible with the injuries that we faced? I mean, Frank Darcy is a starter when he comes back. Zach Haribo should be a starter when he comes back. But then if we get another injury, like, is it fair to say that, considering and that's been the argument about why like Kano's position is secure? So many injuries. We're now at like our 17th injury of the season. I'm pulling that number out of thin air, but I feel like it's 7. I feel like that's closer than saying 3, right?
I mean, it doesn't feel wrong to say it. But I think it's not just the roster. It's so much as the lineup in the set, or sorry, the formation, right? So pick the formation, and so we have enough players where if someone is injured, there is someone there to fill into their spot. So whether those be temporary placeholder players, like bench players, to like, okay, if Nodarse is a starter in the back 3, let's say,
we don't change to a back 4 the next game.
We don't change to a back 4. You put another center back into his spot, and then you move on. And if so-and-so, if Zach is a lock-on in that midfield somewhere, well, all midfielders. We have tons of midfielders. You put someone in there to play Zach's role until he comes back.
I think that's a great answer back to Leo's question about what does Kano need to do? Lock down the tactic, lock down the formation, and you sub like for like, even if it's not your best option. You get this team running on a rhythm, and you go from there. I love it. Question for you then. Is there anything we should even take away from the first face-off earlier this year, or can you learn nothing from the Frank Nodarse red in the 6th minute?
I mean, yeah, when you're playing 84, if you want to add, say, 90 with extra time, down a man, I don't think there's too much that we can really pull from that game and say, like, this is this tactic to beat them. You know, like I'd mentioned earlier on, we did play slightly better in the second half, but ultimately didn't come to anything. So I don't think you can look at that and say, you know, that's the blueprint to beat them, because maybe if we had scored a goal, right, and we like really applied the pressure, but you know, we only had, I think, 3 shots, and I don't think any of them were on target. It was more about kind of calming the game down, like that possession. And that was still early, because that was like April 10th, I think I said. Yeah. So at that point, we
had the whole season ahead of us.
Yeah.
We were young and brightful and hopeful. And now look at us.
So yeah, I don't think there's anything from that game to really go back to.
All right. And we talked about this is number 2 of a very tough 3-game matchup across 7 days. 3 teams we have never beaten in regular play. How important are these fixtures to recovering a playoff berth? And how important are they to the player mentality of finally beating these teams and not having them lord that over us?
Incredibly important. This is kind of the make or break. You know, we've said multiple times where, you know, by the end of July, if we're not here, well, July's over now and we're on August.
So are you saying that by the end of this week, or are you saying we're going to give the entirety of the August run?
We have August at this point. I mean, the important thing would to be see improvement in play, right? If let's say we lose this game 2-1, but RIFC play a very you know, we are all smart enough. We've seen enough soccer where we could say we could feel proud of the way that they went out and played despite the result. I think that would be improvement. But if they go out there and it's anemic again in front of attack, so
you're saying we can lose 3-2, we can't lose 2-0?
Yeah, I think this team has to score. Win, draw, or loss, this team has to score a goal, at least one. And then from there, we need to see some sort of, we need to just look back and say, oh, we were unlucky, right? If we come off this game, lost 2-1, and we had 16 shots, 7 on target, and created 3 big chances, and Carlos Aldana just had a great game, we could say that's improvement. We can take that into the next match and continue that and say, we were unlucky. Their goalkeeper had another worldie against us, but there was fight in the team. There was coherent patterns of play. What they were doing out there made sense, as opposed to they didn't know what they were doing in front of goal. They're pass it around. We created 1 or 2 opportunities, and that's it.
So how does RIFC take all 3 points? Besides throwing elbows and getting automatic red card ejections.
I think they're gonna have to go out there, and they're really gonna have to, you know, fight tooth and nail I think that they are, and that's not to say that this team doesn't that they don't go out there and they're not trying 100%, but a lot of what we've talked about already tonight, I think players need to be playing in their positions so that they can go out there and give it their all. I think if we set ourselves up with another, if we look at the lineup and we're like, I don't know how to make any sense of this, I don't know where these players are playing, and we question it, that's immediately going to make it difficult for us to really look at this match and have a positive outlook on it in regards to how it's going to pan out. I think if you put players in their natural position with I'd say one, because of injuries, I'll give you one option right at this point. Maybe right wing back is the one weird, the curse of Turnbull, where we don't really have outside of, I'd love to see Rivera, but maybe there's a reason we haven't seen too much of him. Outside of that, if everyone else is at least playing in their position, we'll say, okay, fair enough. Let's see what we can do. But if this is another weird chop and change and we've got a bunch of players out of their positions, I just don't, until I can see it, I'm just not going to have the faith that they're going to go out there and produce a competent performance.
Yeah, I agree. I think to get all three, I've got this game pegged as a draw at best, because again, I haven't seen enough. I haven't seen enough from this team. I haven't seen enough, particularly at Centerville Bank Stadium. And so, in my best case scenario, I've got 1-1 draw. In the back of my mind, I've got 0-0 draw, all over it. I don't think that we have a problem potentially not staying very much in this game. Again, the Frank Nodarce red really throws anything you saw the first time around as can we really take it seriously? Because for all intent, we don't know what that game could have been like if we had had a player for 90 minutes, especially a player of Frank's caliber. I think this team needs to really occupy, like you said, one formation style. If it's a back, let's not even say the formation. Let's just start with a back line and then decide. Let's build upon that. And then if you have a back three, if the game plan can be to contain Detroit City, they're not as explosive as we can be on a counter. Draw them in, create a low block, don't even engage in a high press, let them come to you, and then catch them in transition. I think that we need to get back to that transition game. I talked earlier about how this team didn't seem quick enough, but one thing we did see is in the gaps, in the spaces where they were running, they looked better. They weren't 100%, but they looked better than when they were in this slow down play, trying to find the connecting pass when it wasn't just up a wing. A lot of missed opportunities there. I think this team, like you said, natural positions at pace, if they can speed up their ability to touch the ball and move it on or take a look at goal, I think this team has a goal or two in them, regardless of JJ being out. In a lot of ways, I think JJ, we didn't really talk about it, but I think JJ has hamstrung this team into that route one, just all aerial balls. JJ is going to be the brute tank up top who's going to collapse on the ball.
Savior, and the only thing we can do is send a long ball to him.
And I think that kills our creativity. I think that kills our ability to do any kind of goal production that's not coming from an aerial opportunity. And so I know there's more to this team. We've seen more to this team. So I think if they can do that, Detroit just they don't strike me as a well-disciplined team and composed on the back line. They've got talented defenders, but I think you can break them down with a transition goal. I think maybe we need to kind of do a little bit of rope-a-dope, hold on for the first half, and then go after them as hard as we possibly can in that second half and see what we can mix up. But I've got a draw in this game. I just don't see until Coach Cano shows me otherwise, I don't believe we can win. That I'm at that level now as both a fan and as a podcaster with you. I don't think this team has it in them until I'm proven otherwise. What do you got for a prediction?
I want it to be a draw, similar to you. I think that's if anything, until we see the results. I my body, my mind's telling me this is a loss.
But your body?
But my body.
The body's
telling me draw. Yeah.
All right.
When it comes to this match, 7 p.m., you could check that out on MyRITV, ESPN Plus, and 790 The Score.
Do you think a lot of people are going to attend this? This is a midweek game. It's not like a Hartford Athletic game.
No, absolutely not.
I think this could be the poorest attended match, and that's no fault for the front office. That's just the nature of Wednesday games.
it's
but
also
given the
just,
run of form,
it's the nature of the team. I mean, we're just.
I think this could be a very sad state of affairs. I'm gonna try to find a positive out of this, but right now, it'll just be really interesting to see what the attendance reported is and how many people show up. I hope there's a lot. I hope people haven't lost faith, and no one should lose faith. We should continue to support this club. That's what passionate fans do. But it's totally okay to start asking some difficult questions. So before you read us out, I will remind everyone that's in the chat, if you have a difficult question that you want to see us ask Kano, and we feel like it's appropriate, that doesn't get us, permanently banned from the press box or from the press conference room, we'll consider it. Because right now, like, it's important to make sure that the fans stay connected to the coaching staff, and that's an important thing. I know that there's been questions about whether or not we're doing our job and asking the tough stuff from Coach Kano and the rest of the players. So Jason, take us out, and we'll catch you guys in a near podcast again. We'll do another one on Thursday at 8 p.m. We get to do this all over again. I'm super excited to do podcast notes and production stuff with less than 24 hours prep. This is what I live for.
I'm gonna start it before we even see this match. All right, y'all. Make sure to check out our friends over at the Blazing Musket for all of your Fred's TikTok and Blue Sky at RIFC Podcast. We have an Instagram. It's at Raising Anchor, and there is a website, raisinganchorpodcast.com. Anchor's up. See you guys on Wednesday.
Anchor's up.